Okay, here we are at the Your Coach podcast, and I'm really excited to have two guests this time, Alan Miller and Elizabeth Mokrusa, who are the hosts of their own podcast, um, running book reviews. And so, yeah, excited to talk about them about running and books and podcasts. So, Alan, why don't you start and just sort of tell us where you're from, what sort of brought you to this
Yeah, of
point
course, I
here.
don't have to introduce myself because everybody knows us now because they've been listening to Running Book Reviews podcast for so many years now
Because
that
we have so many
they know us
listeners.
they know us so well. Um, yeah, my name's Alan. I've been in Canada now as a resident for about 25 years, but I was born in England and qualified as a pharmaceutical PhD. Um, Got a job about managing manufacturing and went to Australia. So lived in Australia for 15 years, had our children there. Um, uh, and I guess I've been in running for a long time, so I'm quite old now. I'm actually retired, and actually retirement has helped my running quite a bit. Um, Maybe I'll stop there and let Liz do her bit.
Yeah, my background's not as exciting. Um, I graduated from nursing originally, but I went back to school. So I went to Concordia when I was almost 30, and that's how I met John, because John was my coach. And I had started running, I ran in my teens, but then I stopped running, because I had a dad that was a little bit too involved. And then I came back to running sort of after I graduated from nursing because I was working night shift, and I thought, well, I had a hard time sleeping during the day, so I figured, oh, running will maybe it'll help me sleep, I'll be more tired. It didn't do that, but I did continue running. And when I met John, when I went back to school, like I had reintroduced because I was just running, and I'd reintroduced like intervals and things, and yeah, and then I guess I got re-addicted. So here we are, running.
I guess I never actually said why I got into running. Basically, while I was studying, I've always been a big soccer player, and that's kind of my where I was born. That's kind of a religion, not a sport. It's full on. And when I was doing my studies, I found I needed to exercise, but I really needed sort of mental clarity while I was doing the exercising, and I found like running to be like the perfect mix of great exercise and great, I don't know, mental calming or mental stability. So that was kind of the thing that triggered, oh, this running thing. It's more than just, getting a workout. You actually I was coming back to my research, um, mentally sharp at the same time. So no, that was kind of a fun way to get introduced to running.
For sure. I've heard that a lot, that people like to, people start running and they find that it's sort of like meditation, almost like focusing. Um, so Liz, could you tell us a bit about like when you were running when you were a kid and like how that went?
Yeah, so I mean, I started running because so when I was a kid, I really wanted to do a sport. I really wanted to be on a sports team, and I started in swimming at a summer pool. So I guess like eventually I did try soccer, which was another sport that was kind of common around Point Claire. There were a lot of soccer teams. I did that for a season, and I was pretty young. I think I was like in grade 5 or 6 or something like that. But then, as you get older in soccer, like your shins get kicked a lot more. And I discovered I really didn't like that. So, and I wasn't like that good at, the goal of soccer is to get the ball in the net. I wasn't really good at that. So, but I did like running around the field, and I liked the whole idea of like being part of a team. And my parents didn't have a lot of money. So, usually the answer to, can I join this, was no. And then one day my dad came home from I don't know where, and he said, "Oh, I saw some kids running. I mean, kids like I don't know. I guess they were my age, like I was about 14 at the time." Um and he said like, you can go do that. So so I was like, okay. So I showed up the next time that they were running. Um and despite like having a swimming background, so being kind of an endurance athlete, I was really not good at it. Like it wasn't fun. And at first, um, there was a girl there that was actually running to be better at soccer. And so we kind of buddied up because we were both like new. We were both not really good at the whole intervals thing. And so what we would do is it was cross country season and we would run around these soccer fields. And there was a section of the soccer field where nobody could see us. So we would run to there and then we would start walking. This lasted for like a few months, and then she kind of left the team because I think she went to play indoor soccer or something, or anyway, she never came back. And that's when I started to actually try. So I started to, try and see like if I could at least run because it was really, it wasn't sort of like I know running now, where now I know it as like you have 2 times 3 minute intervals with 1 minute rest. It was more like the coach had a whistle and you would have to listen. I think it was one whistle was start and two whistles were stop, and you had to kind of just listen for the whistle and hope you heard it. And so I would just give myself the challenge of running until the next whistle to stop. And yeah, and then eventually I guess like I got a little better, and that meant that I was like with some of the other runners, so it was like a pack. Um and yeah, and then I guess that's kind of how it all happened. It wasn't like love at first run. It was more of a process, let's just say. I
Was it
think
was it with was it Sandy Spence was the coach?
it was, yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
did you ever cross paths with Mel at that time?
No, because
No.
Mel is like, I don't know, maybe 2, 3 years younger than me.
Okay.
And so by the time she showed up, I would have been gone
Hmm.
because I think I only really lasted like 2 or 3 years because I
Hmm.
was maybe 14 when I started,
Hmm.
and I got my first job when I was almost 17, I think.
Hmm.
And that started to be my excuse to like not go to practice and stuff. Because also my dad, sort of along the way when I wasn't really good at running, he kind of just let me be. I would like get to the workouts on my own. I would just show up, I'd start running. And one day I won a race. And that was like a curse because because then he started to, because my dad had been a runner, and I mean, he was always a runner, but he was like more competitive in his younger days when he still lived in Czechoslovakia. And he like, he ran with the famous Emil Zatopek. Like, I don't think it was his coach. I think he was like an older guy that ran with the team at the time or something. But yeah, he would like take me from the workouts that I enjoyed doing with teammates and friends and all that stuff, and he would like start coaching me on his own because he didn't think the coach was like doing the right stuff. And yeah, so it started to sort of suck the fun out of it. And I think like the final breaking point was, so I ran 1500s a lot, and I had this goal. I think I had run like 502. And John, you might remember this because I think I told you like I wanted to run under 5 minutes, and I think my best time had been something like a 5:10, and I ran this race that like the I was basically almost perfect, but I missed it by like 2 seconds. I ended up running 5:02. But like I got everything out of myself in that race. Like I finished exhausted. I couldn't have given more than that. And my dad is looking at the splits on his timer, because he was at every meet and he would like split every lap I did. And he was like, well, if you hadn't fallen asleep in the third lap, you would have been under 5 minutes. And that was just kind of like the icing on the cake. Like I think had already started to be not fun, but that was just kind of like, well, I just ran a PB, but it was not good enough. So I think, yeah.
So I think an important lesson, like for coaches, I always, think of this, like the athletes put enough pressure on themselves and are very, runners generally, but tend to be self-critical. And so it's, as a coach, you don't really need to be like giving them crap about stuff, because usually they're, they're in their own mind. Like, especially you, like Liz, like for you to finish a race and be like, I'm happy with this race, like that's,
Yeah,
that
that's
means
quite
it
That's
was a
something.
really
unusual.
good race, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the important thing I think about with small ones, I'm a little older than Liz and have my own children who are now in their 30s. I remember having them as children and I was running and they were sort of kind of getting interested in, going and running with dad. The important thing is just to cultivate their joy for it. Um, everything else kind of doesn't matter at a young age, because if you've got an interest and you've got a motivation, everything else will come later.
Yeah, I
So,
think I got kind of lucky in terms of coaches. Like I've never had any of these coaches that that you read about, and like a while back there was a coach that was abusing athletes in University of Bishop or something. There was a coach. Guelph. Oh, was it Guelph? Okay, yeah. And we hear about like Kara Goucher. We read her book, and I mean, I think I went through that whole thing pretty unscathed. Like every coach I've had, probably in every sport, has, and maybe I'm just lucky, or maybe I just wasn't good enough that they cared. But every coach that I've had has been, just kind of like, wants you to have fun and wants you to
Well,
like the sport.
but that's not true, Liz, that you were good enough, because at Concordia, like, so as your university coach, like you were, one of the better girls, like you were one of the good runners on the team. One thing, it's funny that you say you want to be on a team, because I kind of remember having a conversation with you about, different motivations for things, and like you feeling like if we were talking about, oh, doing it for the team, and like when it gets hard, like think about the team, and you actually pushed back on that. You're like, no, like I don't want that pressure. I just want to do it like kind of for myself. And like, in the end, it doesn't matter what your motivation is. Like it's going to help the team if you focusing on you and doing your best, is that's what works, and that helps the team, then perfect, right? But we did have that
Yeah.
conversation, like, and you were important to the team, whether maybe we just downplayed it because of that, but like, you were good. I don't say you weren't
Yeah,
good.
I think it was the earlier, like, the originally my motivation was I wanted to be part of a team.
Mhm.
But then I guess like the experience I had made it mean something that
Mhm.
was, full of pressure and
Mhm.
expectation.
Mhm.
And so later I didn't want to be. I remember when I joined Concordia, I actually didn't even really want to race,
Mhm.
but you were like, well, that's mandatory. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I don't
So
think you said it like that, but I
no,
think,
but that, yeah, I mean, that's sort of what we're there for, right? Like, and I think
yeah.
that's, as long as the goals are clear ahead of time, it's like, hey, if you're going to join this group, this is what we're doing. We're here to race. You don't have to join the group. And there's, there have been people that have, said, oh, I don't really want to race, and then they don't race. That they don't, but they can't be on the team, because that's what that team is. But there's other, different groups for different things. So speaking of racing, though, um, like what are your favorite race distances, Liz? I mean, I guess it's not 1500.
Not anymore, no. So part of me wants to say 5K, 10K because you can do many of them.
Hmm.
Um, but then, like there's not so much pressure on this one race, but I'm on this sub 3 hour marathon quest, John, and it's
Hmm.
it's your fault actually.
My fault.
Because back in 2011, like when I went to Boston,
Mhm.
and after having run like I don't know 3:14 or something the year before, and having only had like one real year
Mhm.
with the cross country team, you had said like, oh, I think sub 3 hours is doable.
Mhm.
And yeah, and ever since then, I mean, I've never yeah, I haven't done it yet, but here I am.
Yeah.
So I guess like my favorite race distance, if I could pick one that I want to be good at, I don't know why, but I really want to be good at the marathon.
Mhm.
I'm not that good at the marathon, but I want to be good at it. Alan,
Well,
your turn.
Yeah, I think my favorite race distance in a masochistic sort of way is the marathon. Um, y- y- s- why? Because of the amount of uncertainty and the amount of jeopardy and the amount of chips you've got to put on the table when you do one. When I say that, what I mean is you can't do that one um, and bet all the marbles. You can't do one every few weeks. You got to
Hmm.
go maybe twice a year is probably the max where
Hmm.
you can really come to the table and go, okay, I'm throwing down here. I'm going for it. Um, so there's loads of jeopardy. You know, I always say that the marathon will punish you if you don't do the training. The training's quite involved.
Hmm.
And if you do the training, it won't necessarily reward you either. Um,
Nope.
Yeah.
so so you must do the training to have a chance, but then you still only have a
Hmm.
chance because there are so many things in play,
Hmm.
so many things going on, and physiologically, I'm a scientist, so physiologically, you know, your glycogen stores are emptying out, so you've got a different ball game. You know, you're gradually going along, going, oh, I'm progressing well. I did a 5K, and now I've done my 10Ks, and oh, I'm done my first half marathon, and now I'm going to do the marathon. Smash! Yeah, your marathon plan is great until you get punched in the face,
Yeah.
as the Mike Tyson analogy goes. Um, because your physiology just doesn't extend out that far. You've got to come with some different tools. Um, and now you've got to think about nutrition. You've got to think about, you know, aerobic base building, and suddenly you've got to become some kind of mental guru as well because you've got to keep yourself stable for 3 hours while you're trying to press yourself into some physiological pretzel that
Hmm.
um, that you only get a few chances to do in an extreme way. So, you know, all of that for me is there's kind of a beauty in that, a masochistic sort of beauty. Um, so from that point of view, you know, it's fantastic. I think, wasn't it Zatopek or somebody who said, you know, if you want to be fit, you know, go out and run some races or something, or if you want to be changed, do the marathon. You know, if you,
I think that was Liz's dad who said that actually.
yeah, it could be.
It was Frank.
No, actually, funny thing is, even though he ran with Zatopek, he doesn't like the marathon. Every
Uh-huh.
time I've done a marathon, he's like, "Oh, you're
Why
doing
do
one
you
of
do
those
that?
again?" And actually, the first time that I did a marathon, he said, "Oh, yeah, you know what? Like that's a waste of energy."
That's interesting. So funny
Yep.
about running books. So um the one of the things that stuck with me from Tim Noakes's The Lore of Running, which is like a massive book. I don't know if you guys have
Yeah.
reviewed that one because it's like a thousand
No,
billion pages.
it's too thick. We don't
Yeah,
read
it's
thick
not
books
really, it
like
doesn't
that.
lend itself to a review exactly. But one of the things that I took from that in the marathon section was he talks about how a marathon requires creative energy, and that in the taper it's not only about
Hmm.
like the body tapering and stuff, but you have to kind of prepare yourself like to expend all this creative energy, and so you have to like be emotionally tapering and psychologically tapering as well, because you need all that, all your every type of energy store needs to be topped up to handle the marathon properly. So I thought
Oh
that was a
wow,
good
that's
good
good.
bit.
That's actually good because I did read The Lure of Running, but it's been like more than a decade now. It's still
Yeah.
in my bookshelf though. I
Well,
should
it's
go
been
read
a
the
while for me
marathon
too, but
section.
that just stuck with me. Like I was like, okay, that's like not something that you hear a lot. Creative
No,
energy required for a marathon. So,
I
um,
can see
yeah,
that because it is kind of creative because it's like you can prepare, but you don't know which situation you're gonna get yourself into.
Yeah.
mhm, yeah,
Yeah, you have to be an athlete, but you also have to be a Jedi.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So, talk about racing the marathon and the training. So, what are your favorite types of workouts to do? Like, what's your favorite kind of running? Like, I'll say for me, like I'm not really training to run any races in particular now. I think I might do a race, but I say I like to stay in shape so that I can run like like a steady 10 miles or something, like kind of like a, no, not quite threshold, but like just like a steady. That's one of my favorite runs, just like a semi-hard longish run. What's your favorite type of workout or run to do?
Alan, you can go first.
I would say, sort of conversely to saying marathon is my favorite race, I think the workouts that I like to do are the workouts that have speed in them. So I get an extreme for a marathon runner would be, 200-meter intervals. Um, we did a workout just last week on the track, which was a whole bunch of 200s with 200 floats. Um, and I think just feeling the speed is kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the speed that you don't normally do in your bulk of your training. So you're doing this speed that you would only do maybe in 5% of your training, but you sort of that's not going to last for very long. So you could just go pretty hard, I guess you're going at 9 out of 10 or something like that, 8.5 out of 10 um, in the 200s, and then trying to recover and go again. Um, there's something exhilarating. It's like driving a sports car. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the nearest you get to flying,
Yeah.
is having a controlled sprint. You
Mm-hmm.
can see from the conversation that I gave you that, um, there's a lot of mental stuff in my, mental and emotional stuff in my training.
Mm-hmm.
You have to train for joy. If you get joy out of the training, then the race result is not going to crush you because you've already had loads of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I like doing the speed work for that reason.
You,
Yeah,
Liz?
I'll give two answers. One won't surprise you. I think my favorite run is easy runs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just love to just like go out and run. But I think in terms of workouts, so this has evolved. Like I think back when I was with you, I didn't really like track work, and I think it was because of, where I came from earlier in my running. But now I would say like Alan, like I love those track sessions that are sort of the shorter intervals, like 200s or 400s. Um, I don't really enjoy like threshold runs, let's say. I think like I don't know, for some reason, so I used to be really good at or I thought I was better at the threshold runs than I was at the track work. And I don't know, like in the last decade, I don't know what's changed, but I just find that the thresholds have become pretty tough and exhausting. So like I just finished them feeling like, like I just ran a race basically. Yeah. So, yeah, easy runs are number one for sure, but track is definitely second.
It's interesting answers because yeah, like you said, both like the marathon, but like to run fast. But I mean that makes sense in a way because it's sort of like, you kind of get the best of both. And um, so thinking about that, that you talked about yourselves, but like just generally, like what do you think runners need to do to get better? Like Liz, you do a bit of coaching, Alan. I don't know if you're also coaching people. What do you think runners need to do to get better?
I think the first thing is consistency. That's like the first thing usually. I mean, assuming that a lot of runners already have that by the time they decide to hire a coach,
Mhm.
um, then I guess the other thing is like it depends where they're coming from. So I think a runner that comes from kind of a track background and stuff, they're probably, open to doing a lot of mixed things. And then
Mm,
maybe the thing that I would say they probably need is like race experience.
mm,
Um, I don't know. I find that race experience, at least for me, it kind of prepares you for, the race that you want to do well at
mm,
because you get all the nerves and in the morning when like you have a hard time like you eat two toasts every day of your life, but then the morning of the race, like you're trying to eat your two toasts, and it's like it's almost like you feel like you're gonna vomit halfway through. Like that feeling, you only get that on race day. So I feel like racing can give people a lot of benefit. I mean, unless they're missing something, like if an older runner has never done any speed work, like because they never came from a track background, then that would probably be the thing. But I think otherwise, maybe racing would be my answer.
Yeah, it's a good one. What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, from a coaching point of view, it depends on the level of the people, I think. But if if you take your average person in our club, for example, which is a
Mhm.
sort of a running club of very non-elites, um, I would say probably the thing that's generally most applicable is people run their fast runs not fast enough and their slow runs not slow enough. So
Mm.
there's not enough gap um, between the slow runs and the fast runs. And this comes up all the time. But then
Mm.
when you see people, you see people doing intervals and you
Mm.
can't tell whether they're on a rest run
Right. Yeah.
or running. I actually almost felt like coming up to somebody on the track the other day saying, "Oh, are you doing a recovery lap or are you doing your race lap?" Because
Yeah.
you seem to be going the same speed
Yeah.
almost.
Mm.
Um, and then you get to okay, warm down, and then I find all the people who are actually slower runners than me in general
Mhm.
are
They're all leaving us in their dust.
skipping away on their warm down, and I actually can't keep up with them
Yeah.
because I've smashed myself on the sprints.
Mhm.
So I think that's what the runners need to do to get better is a very general question, but that's a very general answer. If I
Mhm.
was to give you a more precise general answer, I would say what runners need to do to get better is the next thing that they need as
Mm.
individuals. So Liz knows because we talk all the time, but I'm on this kick with running, which is okay, I have a certain amount of things in my running program, and that'll be different for every individual. What's the next thing that I don't have?
Mhm.
And it could be something you need to remove. It could be, well,
Mm.
I'm doing too much mileage. I need to take a rest day, or but whatever it is, for me it was I'm getting old and my form is deteriorating, and I'm not going to get more speed out of developing my energy systems because I'm getting old. But I could get more speed out of being more efficient. So how about I do the next thing that I need to do to improve my running form? And that was run taller. You're crouched over, you need to be taller. So I'm just adding one thing, which is the next thing that I need. Now that will be different for everyone. And then we said, okay, what's the next thing? Ah, I'm older. I'm not actually taking enough protein in my diet. I need protein to support my muscular effort in running, but also I need protein because I get general muscle degradation because of my age. So I need double amount of protein cover. So let's add protein shakes to my daily regime.
Alan learned that from books, by the way,
And
just an aside,
and
because
what I
he
do is
Books.
wouldn't have been
but I
convinced.
do I do one thing,
Mhm.
and then I'll go for several months until I go, okay, that one thing is in place. It's now
Mhm.
part of the routine. Now what's
Yeah.
the next thing? And basically hip mobility has become this month's edition, um, where I'm adding a hip mobility. Listen, I did the routine yesterday at the gym together.
Yeah,
It's
when Alan
basically
adds something new, it means I add something new.
Okay.
it's 5 minutes, and we just play the video and do 5 minutes of. I'm not sure that Liz needs it, but she's a good partner, so she goes
Mm,
along.
Yeah.
But I
you
certainly
gotta
need it.
support your running buddies.
That's
I
it.
certainly need
I think, that's great advice is what's the next logical thing? I think sometimes runners skip to not what is the next logical thing for them, but they skip to like what is the latest cool thing.
Mm,
without locking down the basics of like,
yeah.
are you consistency? Like, are you running every day or six
Yeah.
days or whatever? Are you running slow enough on your easy days? Are you doing workouts? Are you doing them fast enough? Are you doing some short, some threshold, like all those
Mm,
basic things? And then, I mean, yeah, like the running form, sure, that's important, but like you can't get faster by fixing your running form if you only run like 2 times a week. Like you'll fix your running form a lot more by running every day first, and then then you'll
mm,
see. And like or like strength training is another great thing that I think that's like a fundamental thing, like people should be doing something. But as you say, it's individual, where you know people need to be motivated to do it, so you can't just throw a whole big thing at them and then they're like, oh, I can't do this. Or like Liz, like remember we were doing plyos, and I'm like, I saw this
Mm-hmm.
is it was one of my greatest coaching mistakes, was not understanding my athlete. So I thought that I understood the group generally, where it was like, okay, if I give them this, they'll do like a quarter or half of it, and so it'll be fine. And then there was like a whole series of these jumps, and Liz just did everything that she was supposed to do, because that
You
Liz
said
does.
she
twice
was
a
a rule
week. I was
Liz,
follower.
doing
Liz,
twice a
and
week.
yeah, and I think it burnt her out a little bit on the plyos at that time, just a little overzealous with the plyos. But like, usually people don't do what you ask them to do, as much as they're not so compliant. So
Hmm.
so yeah, so you mentioned that Liz said you learned it from a book. So you started this podcast. So tell us about this podcast, like the sort of how you got decided to do that and how you got started and everything.
Do you want to start, Alan?
Sure. Well, Liz and I are two relative. We've learned that we're two, we're sort of two very different people. Um, we almost have sometimes polar opposite views about things. And Liz is a lot. Liz is basically a conscientious rule follower, um, and I'm a sort of bit more of a free spirit, and need to understand why I'm doing something, and then I'll come up with my own version of how to achieve the why. Um, and and rather than find that we didn't have anything in common, we actually found that we have something very specific in common. We love running. We both we're training at the same pace, and um, we spend a lot of time running together while training, and hence tended to talk. And we found out that we both read running books. I was sort of skimming running books, and she was reading every letter of every book that she got. But so she's very
Got to be
much the book
consistent with our
expert.
personalities.
She's very much the book expert. But we would talk running books, and we got to a point where um, I was retiring from work, and I was thinking about, oh, how do I fill my time with maybe running projects? So we talked about, well, maybe we could have a podcast on running books where we would read the books that we've got in our library, and then we would kind of talk about them on the podcast. And Liz thought this was a good idea, so we sort of said about it. Don't know if you want to add anything in terms of how we developed it, Liz.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was pretty much it. Also, the pandemic hit, so that helped because all of a sudden it was, so we started, this podcast started April 1st, 2020 was our first episode. So it was, March 2020 is when like all the offices closed and everybody went home, and I was working in an office. Um, so suddenly I was working at home, and then there were all these rules, like you couldn't have group events. So like I think the club canceled all their workouts. I mean, we had to. It was, illegal to hold them. So, um, and I guess that was also kind of a little bit of a kick in the butt, because now we're a bit missing our running social and our buddies. So it was a way to I guess, still have all the conversations that some of the conversations that we would have on a run.
Did the idea start sort of before the pandemic, and then when that happened, it was sort of the thing that said, okay, we can do this now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
give us space to do it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
my retirement,
Mhm.
because I was able to take on a few things like, editing and
Mhm.
stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Alan retired like probably at just the right time, like December
Oh,
2019.
oh,
So
perfect. Okay.
yeah, so it was sort of
Mm.
like, we were talking about it and we had been talking about it, I think, for a few months.
Hmm.
Because I think we talked about it, in the fall before we started it in the spring. Um, but I guess the biggest kick in the butt was all the changes with the pandemic, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
and we
yeah.
developed it from reading books in our library,
Mhm.
going, okay, what book have you got? Oh, Hanson Marathon Method. Okay, I read that. We trained on that. Let's talk about that. And then we developed into, hang on, let's just write to publishers and tell them to send us books.
Mhm.
And Liz said, "Ooh, can we do that?"
Yeah.
I said, and
I didn't know such a thing was
typical
possible.
typical of our characters, really.
Yeah,
Liz
yeah.
said, "Oh, can we do that?" And I said, "Well,
We're gonna.
let's just do it and see what happens."
Dear
And
publisher, we are a very famous running podcast. Please
yeah,
send us your books.
yeah. Interestingly, the first few people just sent us books because we asked,
Yeah.
and then after a
It's
while, we
funny
had a
because
reputation, and then we got to a point where people will now sometimes contact us
Hmm.
and say, "We have these books, either publishers
Hmm.
or authors."
Hmm.
Um, and we to begin with, we read the books, and then we said, well, let's talk to the authors about the books. They're the
Hmm.
people who know the best about the books. So let's get the authors on. And then again, oh, can we do that? Well, let's see. And,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
As you can tell, like probably half of the evolution, well, maybe three-quarters of the evolution of the podcast didn't happen because of me. But I was always there. So Alan is very good at like at the beginning, he would be like, "What if I word the email like this?" And I'm like, "No, that sounds too pushy." So I would rewrite the email. I'm like, "Here, Alan, you can send this one. I feel comfortable with this." So then he got what he wanted because he could, you know, test the waters of can we get books from publishers and things like that. And I was, at peace because because at least we were polite about it.
yeah, I guess
Good.
that's where I brought a bit more of my executive talents. But where
Definitely.
Liz comes in is the process is formalized, it's consistent, it's reproducible. Um, we hit all our time deadlines um, because of Liz,
Yeah, because I
basically.
get stressed when we're like recording an episode that's going to be released like in 3 days. I'm like, no, 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 this can't be happening. And then what I'll do is I'll like look at the books that we have on our pile, and I try and say like, okay, Alan, let's look at your calendar and see when you're available to do interviews, and then I try and plan the
Schedule them
interviews.
ahead.
Yeah, because
Um,
then if they're scheduled, Alan will read the book
Hmm.
because there's a deadline.
Mhm.
So yeah, because Alan meets deadlines, but I think that, I
I'm a
set them
just-in-time
more
guy.
often.
Yeah.
Yeah. His
Good.
his deadline, yeah, his deadline, his tolerance for last minuteness is
Yeah,
much higher
yeah.
than mine.
Basically, I use the energy as the deadline approaches. I use I feed off the energy of it,
Mhm.
whereas Liz worries about it, so she stresses, and it's just our different characters. It's kind of cool that we have such different characters. We were doing a podcast discussion the other day. What was the book? Oh, the Believe Journal, which hasn't come out yet. Scoop
Mhm.
coming to a podcast, another famous podcast soon. Um, and it has a questionnaire: Are you a worrier or a warrior? Um,
Yeah.
um,
Guess who's what?
we find out that Liz is mostly a worrier and I'm mostly
Yeah.
a warrior. Both things are
Mhm.
valuable, and
Mhm.
as Roshan said, um, both types of people have won gold medals.
Mhm.
Um, but it's just the difference. And what I think what's been kind of nice is we've both appreciated the differences that each of us bring to the party, and it's
Mhm.
worked well. And we've been going for 5 years, and we've never
Yep.
really had problems or difficulties
Mhm.
working that through 2 podcasts a month.
Yeah. And I think that like that's kind of one of the things that makes running so special. I think like it's an environment where you can, I don't know, it's just people get together, they run together, and it's like you can accept each other's differences and be friends anyway, you know what I mean? I just feel like the running space, well, in my experience, and maybe I'm like naive and sheltered, but for me, I feel like that's been my experience in running. And maybe that's one of the things that keeps me in it. I mean, there's also the fact that I like to set goals that no one cares about. Because, you know, if nobody cares, then the pressure is just me that's putting it on myself. And um, it's not like, you know, nobody's life is going to end or, you know, the world's not gonna explode. And, you know, it's just that space. But I think that the fact that you can, you know, you can run with people that are different than you and get along and, you know, um, I guess help each other because in a lot of ways, uh, you know, hanging out with Alan because he's so different. Like I like to think that some of that kind of rubs off on me a little bit over time. Um, and I don't know if like any of my rule following rubs off on Alan, but he does sometimes stop at the
It does.
crosswalk and waits for the walk sign while we run. So, you know, maybe I've had a little impact.
First. Yeah, no, I think it's true what you say. Like, you know, the thing that runners have in common is running, and that is it's a it's usually for people it's like a you know a deep enough passion that it kind of can override some of the other things, and you know you kind of focus on that, and it's a good way to bring people together. I'm curious about your so two podcasts a month and your deadlines and things like it. Just it's almost like it's similar to running in a way, like you're gonna have to plan, you know, plan the training and do the training and things like that. um it have you felt like have you ever felt like at a loss for things or for like books to read or time or anything like that, or do you feel like you could even do more?
Um, I don't think I could read more than
Mm,
2 books a month. Um, like I because there's it's not just the reading of the book, it's also the, you know, you have to make notes and then you have to think of questions and all of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I feel like it's not hasn't really been a pressure just because when it I don't know, I guess our outlook on it is that well, you know, if we miss a deadline, we miss a deadline. Like the
mm,
world's not going to end, you know?
yeah.
So, but at the same time, like we haven't missed any deadlines. We've been a little late. So we
Mhm.
try and do the first of the month and the 15th, and you know, we
Okay.
have released on the 17th or something.
Okay.
Um,
My
but
goodness.
yeah, I
I
know.
think the thing with our podcast is we've always set out to be authentic. So um, one of the things we won't do is we won't skim read a book.
Mm, mhm,
We'll read it all from the front to the back. And
mhm.
one of the things our authors commend us on, and we find a bit shocking, is they say, "Oh, you've actually read the whole book," because
Yeah.
they've done podcasts talking about their book with people who
Who haven't read
haven't
the book.
really read the book.
Hmm.
Um, and that occurs quite often, I think. So you know, our authenticity, and I guess Liz's, you know, just absolute honesty, doesn't allow us to do less than that.
Mhm,
Um, and and our approach has been not to try to make it into some sort of financial um, money making aspect, but to stay authentic to the mission, which is basically to fuel our love for running and our interest in learning about running and our love for running, the running environment and people involved in the running environment.
mhm,
Um, we've never made profits really out of the podcast, even though it's been going for 5 years. I mean, our game plan to begin with was break even,
mhm.
just
Mm,
pay for
we
our
haven't done it
administrative
yet though,
costs, and
but
we I think we achieved that 1 year.
Uh-huh.
Um,
I
yeah.
see.
but we
So
don't
just
worry about that too much. We'd rather that it be um, something that we love doing, and
Mhm.
then we can keep doing it.
I mean, I'm interested in that in a way because I mean, what are your costs? I just think of this podcast, I don't have costs. I mean, I don't pay my guests, so
Well,
maybe
the
that.
podcast, the
No, we don't pay
hosting,
people.
the like the, Buzzsprout. I don't know what platform you use, but we use a platform called Buzzsprout for podcast hosting. So it's
Yeah,
like whatever it is, $20 a month.
I
And
see.
then we have a professional Zoom account, which is like $20 a month.
I
So
see.
I mean, it's not a lot of
That's
Okay.
costs,
that's basically
but
it.
I
yeah,
see.
We
that's
get the books
basically
for
it.
free from publishers. We've never paid anybody for an interview.
Mhm.
No,
Cool.
well, we don't have any income to do that
Yeah,
with, so.
I see. I mean, have you had any potential sponsors kind of reach out, and be like, "Hey, we've got this mattress we want you to sell. Do you want to talk about our mattress on your podcast or whatever?"
The only one was and we have an affiliate link
Yes,
for
I've
is
heard
the
you talk
The
about,
caffeine.
caffeine bullet.
yes, the
Yeah,
caffeine thing. Yes,
the
I've heard that
caffeine
on
bullet.
here. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have an affiliate link. So if people purchase through that link, then we get like a
Mhm.
percentage.
Hmm.
But I don't think we get a ton of
And
people
we
purchasing.
do we do we're up on a platform called Buy Me a Coffee,
Hmm.
which is basically you can put stuff on there and then you can have people buy memberships and get access to it.
Hmm.
But we just leave everybody to have free access to it.
It's a
That
bit
puts
like Patreon.
It's
Hmm.
like Patreon. It then takes the pressure off us to feed it with a lot of stuff.
Hmm.
We can then just feed it with things as they crop up.
Hmm.
Um, and people can have free access to it. But there's a little button saying, if you'd like to support us, you can buy us a coffee.
Hmm.
And we get every so often we get, a few dollars that
Hmm.
trickles in,
Yeah.
which
Oh,
is
that's
fine.
good. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know that one would expect a podcast on running book reviews to make a whole lot of money. It's pretty niche, but I think the people that are interested are probably really interested. Like I
And
haven't made my way through the catalog yet because it's so
yeah,
big. I can't believe I didn't know about this podcast, but I'm not a big podcast listener, even though I'm
Okay.
doing one. I just because
yeah.
I don't know, I kind of work from home and then when I run, I don't listen to a podcast when I run. I don't know if you listen to podcasts when you run.
I
Do
do
you?
if I'm by myself. I mean, not
Okay.
if I'm running with people, but if
Mhm.
I'm running by myself and it's like an easy run, then it's
Mhm.
Yeah.
either podcasts or music. Like,
Mhm.
but music, sometimes you get tired of your playlist, so you need something else. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
where podcasts come in.
Mm.
For me at least. I don't know,
I, I,
Alan.
so- I sometimes do it when I'm walking the dog.
There you go.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Okay, so this is the most important question now. What is your favorite running book?
Hmm. Okay, so
that's a tough
I
one.
yeah, it's a tough one. So we always say we don't have favorites, but I'm gonna
It doesn't have to
state
be one that you've had on the podcast either. It could be one that you're, hoping to
well,
get or something.
so I'm gonna tell you the one that was kind of enlightening for me was
Mhm.
"Today We Die a Little" by Richard Asquith, and it's the life of Emil Zatopek, and
Yeah.
yes, it talks about like how he trained and won, the 5,000, 10,000, and marathon at the Olympics, but
Mhm.
it also talks about communist Czechoslovakia and how
Mm.
it affected society,
Mm.
um, and how it affected Emil. Like he was,
Mm.
he had to do military service, and anyway, and just like the way that it affected people in general, because
Mm.
like people could spy on you, and sometimes it was your family members,
Mm.
and they would like tell on each other for silly reasons, and yeah, it was kind of enlightening for me because my parents immigrated from there and they don't
Mhm.
talk about it and they
Mm.
never really have. But
Yeah.
my mom is a little bit well, a lot just like has this negative view of people's intentions, but
Mm.
all the time, like people she doesn't know, or even if somebody like does something nice for her. I remember she was working in a factory, and if it was her birthday, they would
Mm.
give her like a
Yeah.
mug or like a tea set or something like that, and she always kind of, she'd come home with these things, and she would just kind of, I don't know, she would say, I don't know, she just never seemed thankful,
Mm.
appreciative, or
Basically,
anything.
because she grew up in a regime where people were spying on her.
Mm.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So anyway, I found that it was like pretty enlightening on
Yeah.
for my own like family history, I guess, which I
Mhm.
didn't learn from my family, but I learned from this book.
Yeah. That's fascinating. That's amazing.
Fantastic book, superbly well researched.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, for my part, I usually say, the books are my children, and you never ask a parent which one of his children he loves the best. Um, but to try and give you some content, if you take a training book, I think we would have to go for advanced marathoning, because advanced marathoning by Pete Finsinger and Scott Douglas, because
Mm.
it's the one we've used the most
Hmm.
in our training. So
Mm.
we've that's some factual data for why we should think that that's the most interesting training book. But if you were to say, well, an experience book, like somebody talking about their experience,
Mm.
um, I would probably choose Finding Gobi,
Mm.
Oh yeah,
by
that was a good one.
Dion Leonard, um, the guy who ran the Gobi Desert Marathon, and he had this little dog follow him,
Mm.
and he wanted to adopt the dog, but he had to go back out of China without the dog and then he came back to try and find it.
In the
Um,
desert?
yeah, and how
Oh my
he
goodness.
basically how he was a hard ass runner, and then he kind of had his sort of heart captured by this little dog, and then he wanted to go back and find it, and then he had to try to find it in the. He had some friends look after it, but then it was lost when he got back, and he's basically in China trying to find this little dog that why the hell have I fallen in love with this dog? And
Mm.
it's a fantastic story. Um, so it's
Wow.
pretty cool from that point of view.
Yeah.
Um, we don't hear many fiction books
Mm.
in running, but a fiction book that we read recently that resonated with me a lot and actually references a lot of Emil Zatopek's training
Mm.
um, was The Front Runner by Brad Foley, about a fictional story about a guy in the US, kind of a bit like Steve Prefontaine, a
Mm.
free spirit, learning to run really well, but using um, actual factual
Mm.
training and then
Mm.
extrapolating it out.
Yeah.
Um, and extrapolating it out from modern training methods
Mm.
and making it into a story, which was a pretty nice story.
Oh, okay. So I'm just trying to,
Did you take notes? All those books. Alan mentioned like three of them.
yeah, no, I mean, I think I'm just trying to find, yeah, okay. So those are great. I got them on my list for sure. Fitzinger, I gotta say, so this is kind of a question for you is like, do you ever read something and you're just like, no, like this isn't good? Like Fitzinger, I find is actually not a good training book. I think that he relies too much on hard training for the marathon and not
Yeah.
enough on like kind of more the threshold and marathon side of things. And I know a lot of people have kind of used it, like a group of guys that I coached in Westmount were using it and they just were not getting their goals because they were training too hard all the time. And I think it's like it's called advanced marathoning for a reason. And I think that it
Hmm.
gets people who are not advanced, it's maybe not advantageous to them. So I
Yeah.
don't know if there's another example you could think of where, you like there's a book that comes along and you read the book and obviously you're treating your guests with respect and all and stuff like that, but you're actually just like, nah, this is not. I don't know. I in the last episode of yours that I listened to, the running 3 days of run less, run faster. I could hear the
Hmm.
skepticism in Liz's voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, mostly because I like to run and I don't want to only run 3 days, especially
Yeah,
if those 3 days are always just going to be hard.
right.
So I'm going to miss out on the thing that I like the most, which is the easy runs.
Yeah. That was
And
my issue with that book too. It's like, but if you like running, why would you want to run less?
yeah, but I
Mhm.
mean, I see how it has a place,
Yeah,
because
sure.
I mean, they definitely, I mean, they have a following. That book, I think, is the fourth edition,
Mm-hmm.
third or fourth edition,
Yeah, it's been
and
around a
so it
while.
means it means that, it's definitely worked for people.
Mm-hmm.
And in the book, they do have a lot of like little personal stories, like of people that adopted the training plan and it worked really well for them.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like if I was someone like Andre, my husband, and I really liked biking, maybe I would really like this kind of plan,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because then it would just give me an excuse to do other sports at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when I try and incorporate cross training of any kind, like for example, if I'm injured, which is mostly my motivation for doing any cross training,
Mm-hmm.
other than strength training, which is not really cross training, it's like
It's
supporting your running.
supplemental training. Yeah.
Yeah. But if I'm, trying to replace running with biking or swimming or something, I just find that I get burnt out mentally.
Mm.
I'm not sure if I get burnt out physically, but I'm burnt
Mm.
out. So I think it's mentally I'm burnt out. I think it just doesn't have the same like, I don't know, rejuvenating effect.
Sure. Well, it's hard, right? Like I think if you're injured, first of all, you're not in a happy place usually. You're doing something you'd rather be doing something else. And generally, I mean, this wouldn't be the case for Andre, but like you're not as good at biking, and so it's harder to get the same, kind of like the same experience because with running it's so automatic. You go for an easy run and it's just easy and you
Hmm.
just do it, whereas to go for an easy bike ride, like I mean for me, like there's no such thing. Like I don't like biking,
Yeah.
and it would be too much effort to kind of for an easy, and then also I don't have the skill to do a hard workout on a bike. I'm not good enough on the bike to properly do it, so
Yeah.
it's not useful for me. And I mean maybe pool running is something where it's a little easier because it mimics running a bit more, but like something else like with swimming is also very technical and specific. And like if you can't swim properly, it's not great. Or cross country skiing, again, it's quite technical and you have to know how to do it.
Yeah,
So
those things are mentally demanding. Got
exactly.
to
So
Hmm.
keep tuned in
yeah,
to keep
it's
your technique
challenging.
right.
It's not just, oh yeah, I'll just do some easy cross training. Like it's not as simple as that.
Yeah, that's what I've always kind of found. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's just me. But
Mm-hmm.
I did kind of try and do some of the workouts from that book. And the workouts themselves are like quite challenging because
Mm-hmm.
they have all these paces. They have charts and everything to tell you what they
Mm-hmm.
are. So I think I had taken my 5K time from this spring and I was trying to do like the short tempo and long tempo
Mm-hmm.
and and the paces are just hard. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I just I've since decided that like I'm gonna back off of them a little bit because like
Yeah.
I mean it's not so sustainable, especially if you're not wearing race day shoes,
Right.
which was like a question that I think I had asked on the podcast because you're racing, you're running in
Mm-hmm.
your race day shoes, but most of the time when you're training, you're just wearing regular trainers, no
Mm-hmm.
carbon plate, nothing
Yeah.
fancy. And
Yeah.
so like that little whatever percent that you get from those shoes, like
Mm-hmm.
you're not getting for your training. So then are you just training 4% too hard? So these are the
Mm.
kind of things to think about, which might be just, me and my overthinking everything, but
I don't know if
The
it's
nice,
overthinking. I think that
uh,
makes sense. There are people that train in the super shoes now too. I think that's sort of like there's this whole thing where it's like now you have like your quiver. Have you ever heard this term? Your quiver
yeah,
of
your
yes.
quiver of
shoes.
shoes.
And like I don't know, I don't have a quiver. I have one pair of running shoes and I have spikes that I use because I do track stuff once a week now.
Oh,
But that's
no,
kind
no,
of it.
you have to have a quiver of shoes.
I don't have a quiver. I don't even have super
It's
shoes.
just an excuse to buy new shoes.
Mm,
Exactly. Okay, so
pretty
other
much.
question. Last question. What's the most, maybe it's not the right word, but surprising thing you've learned in all your reading podcasts, or something that made you change something in your own running, in a kind of like permanent way that you're now like, yes, now I do this.
I think for me,
Oof.
it was more like nutrition because we
Hmm.
read Lauren Antonucci's book. And it kind of,
Essential Nutrition for Runners, I think it was called.
yeah,
Mm,
for masters runners or something.
mm,
And so, we've heard about like the protein requirements and everything before, but just like the um the amount of carbs you need to sustain marathon training, for example. What
mhm.
I had done one year was I actually went to go see someone at Anik
Oh yeah,
Besso's clinic.
yeah, yeah.
But Anik, I think, was on maternity leave then. I
Right,
went to
right.
see her friend
Vanessa?
Vanessa. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
they're great.
she gave me a plan based on, how much I was running at the time. We
Mm,
were following the training from advanced marathoning. And
mm,
so now I have that on my fridge, and like I find it really hard to follow because it's just so much food.
mm,
Um, but if I'm gonna start, which is one of the reasons why I tr I think I'm not really motivated to marathon train all year round anymore, just because like it's everything else that's so demanding.
mm,
But in the summer, for example, we're probably gonna start marathon training in July.
mhm,
And so I'm gonna, whip that plan back out, put it on
mm,
the fridge, and try and
mm.
eat all those snacks and all those
Yeah,
meals because it really,
good.
really makes a difference. I mean,
Yeah.
you think, oh, but I'm not hungry, so I don't need to like eat more than I'm eating. But actually, it makes a difference. Like just
Yeah.
the way you feel and just going into the workouts feeling
Mhm.
so much more fresh
Yeah,
yeah,
for
it's
sure.
interesting. That's the
That,
one thing I think that's changed. It's not
yeah.
really running, but whatever,
No,
it
and that's
helps.
that's a really important one for marathoning. I think, and I've talked to Nick about this a lot. Like, I think so many runners are just chronically underfueled and don't realize. Like, not saying like not eating disorders, not whatever, just underfueled, like just a little bit. So like you can function during the day and run, you can do the training, but you're not
You don't have
fueled
that pep.
enough. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
not do you know,
Mm.
and it's like people think, well, like, yeah, well, running makes you tired, so I should feel kind of tired, but like you can feel better if you
Hmm.
top up those fuel stores for sure.
It's actually only once you do top them up that you realize how not topped up you were before,
Yeah.
which is one of those things. So it's like I know it's kind of a hard sell, but I think one of the things that the book said was something about our hormones and that when you run a lot, like your appetite hormone is suppressed or something, and
Mm,
so you don't necessarily get hungrier.
yeah,
Um, and so that's the problem,
don't have the signal.
something like that. Yeah.
Right. Alan, what about you?
Well, I've got all sorts of things running through my head, but I'll start off with this. Um, one of the things I've learned is that running in the heat,
Mm,
which I'm not very comfortable with, and this is another opposite for Liz and I. I like
mhm.
to run in the cold, and Liz likes to run in the heat,
I feel like
and
we're more
uh,
equalized in the
and
summer.
and
We're better
if
training
I
partners.
want to know what to wear, the answer is wear one layer less than Liz. Whatever she's wearing, wear one layer less.
Okay.
But basically, I find the heat uncomfortable. But I think one of the things I've learned is running in the heat is your friend. If you, as long as you hydrate properly and that you pace yourself down,
Mhm,
the added stimulus of the heat is actually going to give you a benefit. Um, so I think we talk about
mhm,
running in the heat is poor man's altitude training.
mhm. Yeah.
Um, and so rather than go, oh God, it's hot, it's going to be a pain. I've got to run, 4:30 pace and it's going to smash me. No, actually back it off and let
Yeah.
the heat do its work.
Yeah.
And make sure that you back it off to the extent that you can come around tomorrow and still be okay for the next training session.
Hmm.
So take the long-term view and use the heat as an advantage. And we've seen, people just recently, I think, over the last few months, really, really engaging at a top level, particularly the trail runners, getting
Hmm.
ready for Western states, um, doing a lot of heat training now
Hmm.
so that they can condition themselves well.
Yeah, that's a good one. Good. So you can learn these things and way more things. 5 years worth of back catalog at running book reviews with Alan and Liz. Thanks so much for coming and sharing your wisdom. I wanted to make two book recommendations before I go to maybe you'll review them. One, I mentioned this to Alan when we were running together. Michael P. Collins' The Emerald Underground. It's a nonfiction, or sorry, it's a fiction book. And it's about like an Irish kid who basically his life's all messed up. He's a runner and he kind of ends up in the US and sort of living out of a hotel and out of a car and just sort of down and out and running plays a big role in it. It's very gritty. It's very gritty. Um,
Oh,
and then the other
sounds good.
one, it's there's a short story. It's called Miracle Mile by Alex McLeod, and it's part of I don't know if this counts because it's part of his short story collection called Light Lifting, and the rest are not running books at all. But the Miracle Mile is I found like the best representation in fiction of the kind of the national level track running scene. Like it's about a guy who's going to run a 1500 at nationals, and he's his day in the hotel beforehand. And you're sitting around in the hotel because you've traveled somewhere. It's a fancy hotel, it's a crappy hotel, and you're with your roommate because you have a roommate, and your roommate's doing stuff and you're doing stuff. And it's just I just thought it was so real of like, yep, that's that very niche slice of reality of national-ish level 1500-meter runners, kind of as and like the metaphor of like kind of caged animal sort of thing. And there's a really cool racing a train scene that is one of the best running scenes in literature, I find. So those
Oh,
are my recommendations. You don't have to put them on your podcast, but you should check them out, I think.
And
okay.
it sounds like you don't think we should be reading advanced marathoning for our next sub 3 hour attempt. So what should we read, John?
I mean, if you're gonna go with a book, um I think I don't know. Like I don't really follow a book. I mean I don't know. I'm kind of a coach. I do my
Yeah,
own plan.
yeah.
I mean I'll make your plan. How's that sound? Liz, you wanna come back to your old coach one more try? One more try.
Maybe we could talk
I
about that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
Yeah.
like I said about Fitzinger, like I just think that it's for me, it's a little heavy on the hard stuff and not enough on kind of marathon pace and steady pace. Not so much threshold, but like this, I call it MP30. It's like 30 seconds per K, slower than your marathon pace. So it's like a fast long run. I think you might actually have that in there, but like,
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
he calls
medium
it
long
long
runs.
run pace
Yeah.
and yeah, with
yeah,
medium
something like
long
that.
runs. Yeah,
So yeah, I know that.
a
I
little
just
bit.
find that it's like the hard stuff is what kills you, and you can do less of that, and then you can do
Yeah.
more threshold stuff. But also with the
Yeah.
threshold, like
I don't survive most of the marathon. I'll be honest, like most of
yeah,
the marathon pace workouts, I fail them because it's like 19K at marathon pace, which is
right. Well, that,
4:15, and I'm
that
just like I
yeah, like
just
that's
yeah,
excessive. But so then
I'm
maybe the
toast.
question is, maybe you shouldn't be running them that fast. Maybe you should be running them at current marathon pace in order to increase your
Mm.
fitness so that you can have the marathon pace. And if are you running them in your racing shoes or you're running them in your regular shoes?
Oh, good point. Yeah, usually for those because they're not very frequent.
Mm,
I'll do those
yeah.
in marathon racing
Yeah.
shoes, yeah,
Yeah.
because yeah, I need all the help I can get
Mm.
basically.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if there's a book that encapsulates like my own whole philosophy. Like, I mean, there's elements of Lydiard, there's elements of Canova, who doesn't have a book really, but there's a book out there that's like interviews with Canova that an American coach, Scott Christensen, I think, I don't forget his name, but he did. Um, the Hansen, there's elements of Hansen, like there's a lot of good stuff. I just think it's I always find if you pick a system like even Jack Daniels, it's hard to pick a system and just be like this is going to work because you need to adapt to what you need, right? So like what if what you need at this moment is more marathon pace, or what if what you need is more speed based stuff? Like it depends on where you're at and what you need.
Yeah.
So it's hard to do a marathon plan out of a book, but
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's just because we're both coaches, but
Hmm.
like for me, I feel like I can't coach myself.
No, you
And
need
so
to have some external.
that's where the well, that's it because the thing is that, like even though you're a coach, like you'll second guess
Yeah,
your
because you're you're
decisions
you're in
because you're
athlete mode when
yourself.
you're yeah,
Yeah.
no, exactly. It's very hard to coach yourself. I'm technically coaching
Yeah.
myself right now, but I'm not doing anything, so it doesn't matter. I'm just running.
Well, that's it. I mean, usually,
Yeah.
usually I could just be like recently, all I've been doing is I've basically been doing the same two workouts
Mhm.
every week. On Monday, I go and I do
Mhm.
uh, uh, 400-meter repeats and
Mhm.
or something, and then like today, I went and I did 5K like tempo,
Mhm.
and followed by like 8 strides, and I just have been doing that for like the last 3 weeks. Has been like the exact same format, um, because my brain was just not in any like I don't know.
Yeah.
It
One of
just
the things we do is we'll do a program out of the book like advanced marathoning, and then we'll say, okay, so how did that go? Well, not perfect. Well, why?
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
we were a little tired going into race day.
Mhm.
Even though we tapered properly, we felt a little tired. Okay, so we're probably overdoing the mileage or whatever. Let's make an adjustment and come round again.
Mhm.
Um, and
Yeah.
we've done that several times, but because we're reaching for the very limit of what we're trying to do, you're on a knife edge. So there's a
Yeah.
there's a fall on either side. If you
Yeah.
don't do
Mm,
enough mileage, you won't have the sustained distance at the
Mhm.
speed you're trying to do. Or if you don't do enough speed work, you'll be able to cover the distance, but you won't be able to do it quick enough.
Yeah. And
Um,
as you say, it's you only get, one or two shots a year with the marathon.
yep,
So
exactly.
that's hard. Okay, well, this has been, I think, my longest podcast because you're such
sorry,
such
we
no, it's of
talk
course
too much.
Liz will apologize. No, don't apologize. It's amazing. You've been the best guests, I think, so far, not to disparage my other guests, but it's two guests. I think that's why. Double the fun. So
Hmm,
no
Yeah.
problem.
double the fun.
Exactly. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yeah, everyone go listen after you listen to this, go listen to Running Book Reviews with Alan and Liz.